Cristiano is a special player for me. Well, in fact, he's a very special player for everyone. Being the all-time top scorer in a sport is no easy feat after all. But the numbers are not what makes him special for me. It's the fact that he is Portuguese just like me. It's that the first time I remember having my dad telling me to come and take a look at a match, it was right there about to qualify for the final of the Euro 2004. And what makes all of it so special is that it wasn't just good moments. My first football heartbreak came as Ronaldo nearly ripped the net with a 40-yard long shot against my local club, FC Porto, who at 9 years of age had left me hoping they would once again make the final of the Champions League. Even after I gave up on playing football myself and watched as my love for the sport slowly died out, maybe because it made me so sad that I wouldn't ever get to live what they live. It would be him who would pull me back into this world. The year was 2014, and I watched as he put two past Manuel Neuer and broke the all-time record for most goals in a Champions League season. By now, I think you get the picture. Seeing him live out what might be the last big move of his career is bittersweet. On one hand, I'll see him in red once again playing for Manchester United, one of the first foreign clubs I ever fell in love with. But it also means one other thing. That his time with Juventus has ended, and definitely not how I expected. In 2018, after the UCL final, I, as always, sat beside my father watching, as Ronaldo let it be known that it had been wonderful to have played with Real Madrid. For a second, it was like the world of football stopped. Surely he had messed up, he didn't mean to say that in a past tense, did he? Rumors reached such heights that even the World Cup seemed to be forgotten about for a few moments, but eventually, he joined Juventus. It was incredible. Once again, he had led the club to unprecedented levels of glory, only to leave while at the very top. How could a 33-year-old be so hungry for success? Well, as he said it himself in his presentation, some players at that age leave for Qatar or to the United States. But he is different, and I believe them. And so started the most ambitious quest of his career, to bring the Champions League to Turin. A city that had on 7 different occasions watched Juve fly back to them with a silver medal as all they had to show for their hard work. It could be argued that it wasn't even that big of a challenge. In 2015 and 2017 Juve had made the final, and in 2018 only Ronaldo himself with that unforgettable bicycle kick had managed to put a stop to them. But in reality, what might have seemed like a solid team had hidden cracks that were bound to lead to their collapse. First, Buffon would leave for PSG right as Ronaldo arrived, leaving Szczesny as the main goalkeeper, a change that would eventually prove decisive. Barzagli and Chiellini followed a similar path. The first was playing his last year before retirement, the second was weakened by his age as he approached his 35th birthday, and would be injured 11 times over the next 3 years, at one point missing 32 matches due to the rupture of his cruciate ligament. Added to this, players who had experienced their peaks over the last few years were now declining, and that would be a major problem, from Alex Sandro to Pjanic to Matuidi and even Khedira. And finally, there's the always relevant gap between expectation and reality. With many fans failing to keep up with Serie A, there was a sense that Juve's squad was completely stacked, while in fact, over the last few years they had been stripped of so many top players it was hard to even keep up. Lichtsteiner, Dani Alves, Patrice Evra, Marchisio, Paul Pogba, Andrea Pirlo, Arturo Vidal, Kingsley Coman, Higuain, Alvaro Morata, Llorente and Carlos Tevez. And though they should have used these departures to fund significant squad improvements, not that much had happened. There was João Cancelo, who was an exceptional signing. There was also Douglas Costa, who would not work out between injuries and other shenanigans. He proved much less useful than expected. There was the return of Bonucci, which should have been an alert of the atrocious habit Juventus has of re-signing players. Bernardeschi, Cuadrado, Matuidi and even Dybala a few years back were other relevant signings that would have substantially different impacts on the squad. All of this added up to a team that was more of a facade than something with actual substance. Cristiano would have a much harder task than the one he had been made aware of, and so began the first season. Domestically, it would be the easiest one. Even though the signing of Cristiano had brought in a lot of attention to the league, the market had closed before the teams had a chance to profit from it, and Juventus would walk to the title, finishing 11 points ahead of Napoli, but some of the early signs were there. Juventus lost the Coppa Italia for the first time in 4 years and only won 1 of their last 9 matches. Just keep in mind that at a certain point they were 20 points in front of Napoli. Ronaldo had finished the season as the player who had won the most points for his team in all of Europe, a total of 31 across all competitions. It wasn't even close, he was always rescuing them at the last minute. Just keep in mind that in their 6 draws of the season, only in 1 occasion it had been another player other than Ronaldo to tie the match. Regardless, they had won the league and the focus of this season was on the Champions League. It all went wrong as 29 minutes after his debut, Ronaldo got a red card and a 1-match ban, which in my opinion was very harsh refereeing. As Ronaldo came back, he would play none other than Manchester United, and he would put Juventus in front with one of the goals of the season. Then, he would assist a winning goal against Valencia and Juve's only goal against Young Boys. So they arrived at the knockout stage and Juventus would be matched with Atletico de Madrid. Unlucky, but to be fair, Ronaldo was like the boogeyman for this club. Only 4 hat-tricks have ever been scored against Simeone's Atletico, and all of them were scored by Cristiano. Along the same lines, the last time Atletico had been knocked out by a team that didn't include Cristiano was 2009. As you might imagine, Atletico de Madrid fans were over the moon when Ronaldo unwillingly sent the ball into the net to make the first leg match 2-0 in favor of Atletico. They booed him, yelled out his name, Simeone even celebrated by pointing to his groin, and Ronaldo stood there, watching. The storm was brewing as Ronaldo raised his hand, indicating the number 5, the number of Champions League trophies he had won. As Ronaldo walked out of the stadium telling the press, "I have won 5 Champions Leagues. Atletico won none. We will see in the second leg." Outside, Atletico fans mocked him in all sorts of ways. It was euphoria. The giant had been tumbled. Over the following days, odd stories would show up in the press. Ronaldo had invited all of his friends and family to watch the second leg. Why was that? There was a message telling one of his friends that he would score a hat-trick. Surely he doesn't believe that. Another text message pops up and is assuring Evra that Juventus will make it through. This all coming from the man who a few weeks before the first leg defeat had told the press he would do the impossible to bring the Champions League trophy to Turin. There was reason to be very afraid, but Simeone seemed unbothered. Was it mind games? We will never know, but what we will never forget is the quote, "I will quit and go sell watermelons in the streets of Madrid if Juve comes back in the second leg." As the anthem was played, Ronaldo looked focused, like a soldier. 29 minutes in, a powerful header would render Oblak useless and Juventus were in front. As the second half began, another header would force Oblak to stretch out as far as possible in order to catch it, but it seemed as if it had gone in. There was a moment of suspense, but then it was confirmed. Ronaldo had tied the match for Juventus. The team was in uproar. 4 minutes before the end of the match, an incredible run from Bernardeschi. Yes, you heard that right, those might be extinct now, but back then they were a thing. As I was saying, a run by Bernardeschi would end in a penalty. An ever-decisive Cristiano Ronaldo would score to give the win to Juventus, and before he went back to the locker room to celebrate, he would make sure to recreate Simeone's hip thrust celebration right in front of the Atletico fans. The comeback had been completed. The Atletico fans watched in disbelief and the world began to believe that maybe Ronaldo could really do the impossible. Their next match was Ajax, a collective of young talents who had already shown Real Madrid what they were made of, and were more than willing to do the same to Juventus. Ronaldo would send Juve in front with an incredible header following an inch-perfect cross from Cancelo, and some of the most impressive off-the-ball movement football can provide you. Unfortunately, Juventus would not manage to hold on to the result and the final score would be a 1-goal draw. There was a slight advantage towards Juventus due to the away goal as they headed towards the home leg, and it only became more evident that they would go through as Ronaldo once again seemingly showed up out of nowhere to score through a header and put Juve in front. Ronaldo had scored 5 times in the last 200 minutes of football. Now he could only hope that Juventus would not keep on conceding, but we all know how it went. First, the defense seemed to completely fall asleep as Van de Beek, who they assumed was offside, ended up completely alone with the goalkeeper and scored. Then, 3 players entered the same aerial duel with De Ligt, and somehow he managed to score, sending Juventus on their way out of the Champions League. The season was over, following the string of defeats I mentioned previously, and so was Allegri. And a few months after his arrival at the club, Ronaldo was already witnessing the first managerial change. Over this last year, aside from Ronaldo, who would win the Serie A Player of the Year award and finish 3rd on the Ballon d'Or after winning the Nations League with Portugal as the top scorer of the final stage, the main highlights of the squad had been João Cancelo, who seemed to constantly break through the other team's lines before supplying Ronaldo with incredible crosses, and Moise Kean, a teenager who at times seemed like a mini Ronaldo, showing up very often when it mattered the most. So, Juventus had the marvelous idea of selling both for a total of £56 million plus Danilo, who had pretty much been hated by both his previous clubs. Though, to be fair, once he moved to centre-back, he would be pretty solid for Juve. Alongside this, they would also sell Spinazzola, a player I was hoping would get more time in the squad, but was deemed by new coach Maurizio Sarri as deadwood. I'm sure if you watched Euro 2020, you are well aware that Spinazzola is much more than deadwood. This was the kind of business who made me feel completely hopeless watching Juventus over the previous years. Regardless, it funded the arrival of De Ligt, Christian Romero, Luca Pellegrini and Demiral. All great signings, if it wasn't for the fact that Sarri would loan out Romero and Pellegrini, and would at times pretend Demiral didn't even exist. Other players who arrived were Rabiot and Ramsey, both for free. Which would be awesome, if it wasn't for the fact that it would be really obvious to anyone who watched them play for Juve why they were free agents. Under Sarri, Juve displayed the first few signs of struggle domestically, but first, let's focus on the Champions League group stage. Ronaldo was poor. In all honesty, until the beginning of December, he was clearly underperforming, only scoring 6 goals in 15 matches. Though to be fair, he went through 2 minor injuries during that period. Still, Juve had been doing okay under Sarri and was second on the table, sitting 1 point behind Inter. But then, the beast was awakened, and Ronaldo scored in every league match between November and the last match before the pandemic break. That's 11 matches in a row, tying the league's all-time record for goal-scoring streaks. And just like that, Juventus were top of the table. Unfortunately, they had also just played their last 16 first leg match against Lyon and lost the match 1-0. That would have been enough to kill the team's confidence. After all, most of them clearly showed to have a weak mentality. But then came the pandemic. 3 months without football, and it broke them. By the time they came back, they lost the Coppa Italia final and went on an awful streak of bad form, wasting 13 points in just 7 matches, even as Ronaldo finished the season with 15 goals and assists in 12 matches. These performances proved essential to Juve's success, who would finish the league just 1 point in front of Inter. Not enough is said about this. Ronaldo performed a miracle. Just take a second to process the fact that the 37 goals he scored that season is the most goals scored by any Juve player ever in a single season. Even Del Piero himself, one of the club's biggest legends, topped out at 32 in his best ever season. A season in which he had teammates like Inzaghi, Zidane and Edgar Davids, not the likes of Higuain, Rabiot and Matuidi. After the end of the season, the Champions League returned, and the tournament would be played in Portugal with single-leg ties. There were a million reasons for Ronaldo to want to make sure they persevered in the competition, and he tried his hardest, scoring twice in the second leg, including an astonishing goal from outside the box where he just seems to thread the needle between all of the defenders. Still, it wasn't enough. Juve had conceded again, and they would go out on away goals. Once again, the coach would be fired. There were talks of Guardiola, but instead, Juve decided to hire Andrea Pirlo as the coach, who had yet to coach any team, even at the youth level. Sure, he was a great player, but it was bound to go wrong. They swapped Pjanic for Artur, got McKennie from Schalke, Morata made a return, and the one good thing to come out of the transfer market, they got rid of a lot of deadwood and signed the incredible Federico Chiesa. I can't lie, I'm a big fan of the guy. One final note though, they also sent Pellegrini back on loan and sold Romero to Atalanta, and for this one, I gotta break the chronological progression of the video to say he won the Serie A Defender of the Year award. They pretty much gave away the best defender in the league What is wrong with this club, like for real? To be honest, this season the team didn't play that much worse than Sarri's. They were just more consistent at playing poorly. Sarri's Juve just went on a lot of periods of awful form. Pirlo's side, on the other hand, was constantly disappointing everyone with how mediocre they were. Pirlo ended up getting only 5 points less than Sarri. The difference was Pirlo finished 4th in the table and Sarri finished 1st. So why were the other teams playing so well? First of all, the newfound appeal for Serie A, in great part due to Cristiano's arrival, had brought in more money, and that meant the clubs were now able to get transfers that weren't available to them before. Players like Lukaku, Hakimi and Ibrahimovic had joined Juve's rivals and made sure their life was much harder. Besides this, Gasperini had turned Atalanta into a European attacking sensation, so Pirlo wasn't very good, but he also got very unlucky with the hand he was dealt. The finals Champions League season was just another disappointment. Ronaldo scored or assisted in every match of the group stage, but once they met FC Porto in the last 16, Juventus started by conceding in their first minute as Betancourt seemingly just gifted the opposition a goal. Then another goal for Porto, as once again you're just left wondering if the defenders were sleepwalking through the match. Chiesa still pulled one back, which happened to be the first UCL knockout goal not scored by Ronaldo since his arrival. So far, he had scored the first 7. It really shows just how helpless he had been. The second leg was equally as disastrous. 90 minutes in, a penalty for Porto, they go in front. Then Ronaldo assists Chiesa, who goes on to score twice and take the game into extra time, where Szczesny concedes an embarrassing free kick, taken once again by Sergio Oliveira. Rabiot still manages to score another, but Juve goes out on away goals once again. At least this time around it wasn't as heartbreaking for Ronaldo, who also didn't have too great of a performance. Juventus finished the season by winning the Coppa Italia, and despite their poor league performance, Ronaldo finished as the top scorer and totaled 36 goals across all competitions. Because having the record for most goals scored in a season for Juventus wasn't enough, he had to take the second place spot as well. And at least that's something to show for a season that otherwise could have been a complete waste of time. Over summer, Ronaldo took part in the Euro 2020, being involved in 6 goals over the 3 group stage matches before being knocked out by Belgium in the last 16 despite Portugal dominating the match. Regardless, once again, he did make something out of it, as he would win the Euro's Golden Boot for the first time. Once that was done, Pirlo was eventually sacked and replaced by, of course, who else but Allegri, the coach who signed Ronaldo 3 years earlier. What is it with Juventus and going back and forth between selling and re-signing and selling again? They bought Emre Can and sold him after 1 season, same for Cancelo and Demiral pretty much. They sold Keane and Bonucci only to get them back after 1 season. They bought Higuain for 90 million only to sell him after 2 seasons and then re-sign him again. They were even looking to buy Pjanic again this season. I just don't get it. It's just like they make every wrong move, and even when they make the right one, they end up just selling the player for cheap after 1 season. At this rate, they'll end up selling Chiesa to some other Italian team or selling him to some other European giant for less than what they paid for him. Regardless, this season, Allegri would quickly start making some offhand comments about how Ronaldo wasn't gonna be a 100% regular starter, and very quickly it escalated to rumors that he would join PSG, then Man City, and out of nowhere, he had signed for Manchester United. Many seem to think Ronaldo is responsible for Juventus' lack of success over the last few years, but I strongly disagree. I believe he's the sole reason why Juventus have managed to get this far without the alarms being sounded. They're a team about to collapse, but only time will tell. What do you think is gonna happen? I'd like to know your opinion. Also, should I make a video about Messi's move to PSG and maybe another one on how Ronaldo will fit in at United? I wasn't sure because there's already so much content about it, but I'm really passionate about these two and I think it would be cool to give my opinions on it. Well, I guess you tell me. Oh, and one final note, don't worry about the Messi documentary, it will come, but I want it to be great, and that will take the time that I often can't seem to find, but nevertheless, it will come, don't worry. Also, Giacomo Grosso is a subscriber at the channel. I promise that the Diego Milito video will come, but right now there's just so much stuff going on and I just think it would be too bad to miss it all, you know? So yeah, that's it, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.